not. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, we'll take that as a good sign then. All right, hi. I am Sarah. I'm working at the Interledger Foundation, so I've come to talk to you today about our Open Payments protocol. And for those of you who don't know about Interledger, we're a global non-profit who work towards creating a more interconnected payment system in the attempt to grow financial inclusion. And yeah, at the moment I'm working as a front-end dev, but I've also been working on the back end on some of these protocols as well. So I think the best way to start understanding the standard and where it comes in is to first touch base on what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve. And right now we can agree online payments are absolutely ubiquitous, whether that's an e-commerce site trying to sell goods, or a fundraising platform that wants to accept donations, or a subscription service. And there isn't really a good way to handle how we're doing payments online at the moment. I'd say the most common scenario is to use an intermediary, like a third-party payment gateway. And this helps, because it takes away some of the complexity from the apps that need to have payment capabilities. So there is that simplicity and abstraction, but it comes with the cost of potential fees and delays. The application is handing over a lot of their control about how that payment process is handled. You risk things like vendor lock-in. And the one that feels the most important to me is you're saying to your users, you need to be okay with handing over this really sensitive financial data to someone else. And you hope they're being responsible with it. Personally, I feel very uncomfortable every time I enter my credit card details online. More uncomfortable when I go back to that website and I don't need to enter them again. So that's an issue. As another alternative, you can do direct integrations with banks. This is not always possible to begin with. If it is possible, it's complicated. It can also be an exponential problem, because while you can tap into some banking services, as soon as you want to broaden the horizon of who you're serving, for instance, if you want to expand to allowing payments from mobile money accounts, you're going to need to figure out new custom integrations. So this problem is repetitive and kind of expands exponentially. And this is where Open Payments comes in. So before we dive into the exact details, I want to be very clear that we're talking about the Open Payments standard that Interledger is working on, because I know the term Open Payments, sometimes you can just read that as like open banking concepts in general. So just so we're all on the same page, we're talking about one specific standard in this talk today. And the Open Payment Standard enables third-party service providers to interact directly with their users' accounts in a secure and standardized way. So this is the first big thing, is standardization. As soon as you standardize something, it requires one integration, and immediately you can connect with everybody else who has integrated this technology already. So that brings complexity down significantly to become a linear problem instead of an exponential problem. And this, it helps to decrease developer time, it helps to decrease the complexity and the risk that comes up with every other integration that gets done. So at Interledger, our big mission is to make it as easy to send a payment as it is to send an email. And when it comes to the Open Payment Standard in particular, I think this is a really perfect analogy. So if you think, I have a Gmail account, you have an Outlook account, it doesn't matter. All I need to send an email to you is your email address. And I trust that my account provider and your account provider are going to speak that same standardized language. So all that complexity is abstracted. I don't need to know who your account provider is, just so long as I have that email address. So Open Payments, we're trying to do the same thing. And instead of an email address, we use a wallet address, which, like an email address, is something that is human readable, so it consists of words instead of a long string of numbers like your credit card, and it's something that's publicly shareable. So, the same way if I meet a new acquaintance, I wouldn't mind giving them my email address. I really wouldn't want to give them my credit card number. Your wallet address is something you could share in that same manner. So what exactly does this mean? We've said already that Open Payments provides a standardized way for third parties to securely communicate directly with their users' accounts. I think at this point it's really important to note two more things here to prevent any misconceptions. And with Interledger and the protocols that we've been working on, we're completely account agnostic. So it doesn't matter if that's a bank account, it doesn't matter if that's a mobile money account or a digital wallet, it doesn't matter what currency you're using. If you're using rands or dollars or any other fiat currency, it doesn't matter if you're using cryptocurrency, it doesn't matter if you're using coffee beans or gift vouchers. We are talking about how we communicate these ideas and how we communicate those payment obligations. We don't care what you're using it for under the hood. It's meant to be versatile and open and flexible. So the second thing, which I've touched on briefly already, is that Open Payments is about this communication protocol. We're talking about setting up payment obligations, and it's not touching the settlement layer. So I know our previous speaker mentioned briefly clearance and settlement and all these things that are happening. So when we look at it, the Open Payment standard is saying, okay, the third party speaks directly to the user's application and they agree to this payment happening, then those two financial institutions backing those payments have now entered into this obligation. And then at the end of the day, they actually also need to move those funds from one account to another account, and that's on the settlement layer. So we're doing the direct communication, but the settlement is happening below that. So obviously, the advantages of this is as soon as you have direct communication, you do not have any risks with vendor lock-in because you're already talking directly to your customer. The big one for me, again, is no sensitive financial information is being shared, so your users can trust interacting with you. And also from an application perspective, you're not taking on all of the risks associated with storing that financial data and worrying about things like data breaches, etc. And I think also from a developer's perspective, you can integrate with these APIs and get up and running and be fully in control of your user's experience. So I think it creates a really nice environment to innovate and compete and come up with new ideas. Yeah. Yes, also, as soon as you hear like, okay, I have direct access to your account, I'm sure that there's alarm bells going, I hope that's secure. You know, I don't want just anybody to have access to my account. And yes, of course, this always remains under the user's control. And what's really nice about the system to me as well is our authorization protocol allows for very specific permissions that are given. So users can define the amount that will come out, or like up to a certain amount. They can define the time frame with when this amount can be accessed. They can say, should this be a recurring payment? And if it is recurring, how often? So can it be once a month? Can it be twice a month? Can it be once a week? So you can get these really nice fine-grained permissions that are being given, which I think really helps to foster trust. The last thing you want is this blanket like, oh yeah, have access to my account, I'm sure it'll be fine, you know. And how we're doing all of this is through a RESTful API messaging system. So let's go through an example. I hope that's given you an overview of where we're going, and now we can walk through it in a little bit more of a granular way. So the very first step is you go to an account provider who is Open Payments enabled. So this could be a bank account, like I said, mobile money account, whoever it is that has integrated that Open Payment standard. And the same way for any other time that you go and open up an account, usually you would get an account number, maybe you'd get a credit card number. In this instance, one of the things you'd be provided with is a wallet address. So what is a wallet address? Every Open Payments enabled account is identified by one or more URLs called wallet addresses. So it's basically an alias for the underlying account. It is a URL, so it actually acts as the service endpoint. So as soon as an application has your wallet address, they've already got the way into accessing your account provider. So it keeps things really simple and clean. As I mentioned, human readable, publicly shareable, which just makes for a nice user experience. In order to interact using Open Payments, both the sender and recipient both need to have wallet addresses. Same way with email. I can't send you an email if you don't have an email account. Same system. And yeah, for the applications who are processing payments, all they need is a wallet address. So if I want to send a payment, all I need is your wallet address, which just really simplifies the user's interaction on that site. So our example, we have our application is an online music store, and we have Bob Marley who wants to upload his songs, and we have Alice who would like to pay to download some music. Bob uploads his songs and his wallet address, and the app, like I said, can query that address directly. Alice will also upload her wallet address and select a song. And it's really that simple. So once she's selected a song, added it to her cart, we can begin that payment flow. And the first step in that flow is to send a grant to the recipient's account provider. And these grants are basically used to give the app authentication to perform certain actions, and that's using access tokens. So to ensure the integrity of every request, signatures are required, which are generated following the HTTP signatures specification. And for our grants, we are using GNAP, which I don't know if anyone has heard of GNAP, yeah? I mean, at least some of you have heard of GNAP. But it's the Grant Negotiation and Authorization Protocol. And it's similar to OAuth 2, so you might be wondering, okay, why are you using something different? And the reason is that OAuth 2 is best suited for delegating access to information. And what we're trying to do is delegate access to control. So with OAuth, access is expressed as a string, and trying to include all of the different parameters that we need, you know, who's accessing this money, how much, how often, during what time frame, things can get really messy. And with GNAP, we use JSON objects, so we can make things much cleaner and integrate it directly into the spec. Okay, so once that grant has been made, it allows the application to make a request to the account provider directly saying, hey, would you please make an incoming payment resource for me? And the incoming payment is basically just alerting the recipient like, hey, expect some money to come in, and the recipient's account will return a unique payment identifier so that those payments know exactly where they are going. All of these interactions require grants. So once again, we're going to send a grant to the sender's account this time, and that's to make a quote. And another thing that's really stunning about Open Payments is the transparency that it offers. So the quote that a user gets, first of all, it's in their own currency. So they're not now trying to do math, converting between currencies they're not familiar with. And it includes any transaction fees or foreign exchange fees. So as you get that amount and you're agreeing to the payment, it's very clear to you exactly what it is that you are agreeing to, and you're not getting any nasty surprises later. Once again, we have the grant request to the sender's account provider, and this grant request is to create an outgoing payment. And this is the resource that once it's created will create that payment obligation and sort of mark the end of the Open Payments flow. So this is the big one. We want to make sure no mistakes have been made, that the user's been notified, and we've got their explicit consent. So before that grant even completes, we first need an interactive flow from the user, which is between them and their account provider, so that they say, yes, I've seen the quote, I know how much this is going to cost me, I know who I'm paying, and I agree to this payment happening. And only once that has happened will we get that outgoing payment resource created. That is the end of the Open Payments flow, and finally we get money moving across, and like I said, that's happening below Open Payments, and that's the settlement layer. So money is finally moved from one account to another, and Alice gets to download her music and enjoy it. So obviously as the foundation, our mission is to increase financial inclusion. So how does Open Payments help us with that mission? I think the biggest value add that Open Payments has for financial inclusion is that with that single standard, we can get vast different accounts up and running and able to participate in the digital economy, where right now that's not always very easy. So we're also hoping that this translates to a reduced transaction cost for the end users. First of all, the Open Payments standard is free, so there's no costs coming in for using that. Using a single standard, helps to lower development efforts, which also relates to significant less costs if anyone has developed anything, which I'm sure you all have. Everything takes longer than expected and has many more problems along the way. Also, because we have this direct communication between the application and the user, we're not going through any unnecessary middlemen. So they're not then adding additional fees on top that then get translated over to the user. And right now, the fees that we have a disproportionate effect on people making small payments. So I think it would be really nice to not have that biasing people who are making smaller payments more often. As with all good things, there are some catches. As I mentioned, both the sender and recipient both need those open payments enabled accounts, so they both need to have wallet addresses in order for Open Payments to work. And this does create an adoption hurdle, because right now we have, I think, some really cool technology and some great vision, but we need to get that momentum of enough wallets actually, or banks taking on this technology so that they become Open Payments enabled, so people can get wallet addresses. And I think, it's this balance where it's like, well, okay, why should we take that on when, who's using it, and we need to get those applications really excited about using this technology. And so you're kind of balancing on both sides, trying to hype people up. And I think we've done some really great work to make the adoption of Open Payments as easy as possible. So we have our Rafiki mono repo, which sort of packages all of this stuff, the Open Payments, the Interledger protocol, which is a whole other story, but Open Payments runs on, and it packages it up nicely into one thing so that you can get this out-of-box functionality simply by integrating Rafiki. And then for the client applications, we've got our SDKs, we've got our docs, we've got explainer videos up to try and make it as easy as possible for the client applications to get up and running with this code as well. And then a few other T's and C's is that even if you have two people and they both have wallet addresses and they want to transact with each other, Open Payments itself doesn't guarantee that there's a shared settlement layer. So if I have an Open Payments enabled account and so do you, and they can talk to each other, which is what we guarantee, it doesn't mean that they're actually able to necessarily transact with each other. If they can't, that payment would fail, so it would be a transparent problem. And I think in general, a lot of that financial infrastructure that's underlying is in place. Sometimes there can be regulatory hurdles that are still being overcome, for example. But the more widespread this becomes, I would say the less of a problem that would be over time. But just to be aware, these are separate issues, settlement versus communication. Yes, and even though we would very much like to lower fees, we can't promise no fees, because at the end of the day, these are still service providers. They're going to potentially charge transaction fees or currency conversion fees. What we are doing is saying, let's not take on any unnecessary middleman fees when we can do that direct communication. So yeah, like I said, we have so much more that I wish I could cover, and I hope you guys will please come and talk to us afterwards and have a look at our website and our docs and read more, or maybe we'll come back in the future to do another talk. But we've got Rafiki, which bundles up all this code. It is open open source, so come and have a look. Please contribute. Learn more about the Interledger protocol, which is part of the underlying technology behind open payments. We've got some really cool use cases for open payments, like Web Monetization, that allows streaming really tiny payments in live time. So you could actually have a system where you go and read a news article and you're paying for it while you're reading it. So it's a pay-as-you-use system. Lots of really amazing use cases for that. And we've also got some nice demos up. So we've got our test wallet and test boutique, so you can have a look at using some play money to get a feel like what would it be like to have an open payments enabled digital wallet, and what would it be like to do a checkout flow using open payments on an application. And then lastly, 15 seconds over time, but we have our Interledger Summit happening here next weekend, and tickets are still available. If you'd like to come, we would love to have you, and it's a great opportunity to learn more about the payment space and Interledger and everything that we are doing.
This weekend.
This weekend.